morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar on strategic AI adoption. I'm Katie Erickson. I'm the marketing director here at Boyer & Associates, and I have just a couple super quick housekeeping tips for you. First, yes, you are on mute, but of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop those in either the chat box or the Q&A. We'll monitor both and make sure that we can get your questions answered at the end of the presentation. Second of all, of course, we always record our webinars so that if you are watching afterwards or want to share it with someone, then you've got that option as well. So you'll get a copy of that recording possibly as soon as this afternoon, if not tomorrow. I am Katie Erickson, as I mentioned, and our presenter today is Tom Hart. He's a pre-sales engineer here at Boyer & Associates, and he's also one of our AI gurus. He's very passionate about this topic, very knowledgeable about it, and everything he learns, he's been sharing with Boyer and now here with you today as well. So we'll talk just a little bit about Boyer, and then I'll pass it on to Tom. Several of you are our clients, so this is probably not super new to you, but in case not, I just wanted to remind you that we are all about making you better. And we like to have some fun while we're doing it, so we try not to be super straight-laced. We want to, be real with you guys and everything. Some of the ways that we do that, we're very big on the whole Microsoft ecosystem, kind of connecting all of your data, whether that's your Dynamics ERP to your CRM, vice versa, the Power Platform. Microsoft Copilot is a cool, great big one right now that we'll talk about a little bit today. And that's just kind of how we like to help our clients. We've been around for about 30 years. We have consultants all across the US now, although our headquarters are still in Minnesota, which is where Tom is. We do have over 500 clients now, and we always like to share this little tidbit in case you aren't aware. We did win a Microsoft Partner of the Year award last year, specifically in the area of social impact, inclusion, changemaker. We're very proud of that and very proud of being able to help our clients be the best that they can be. And with that, that's my introduction. I'm going to hand it on over to Tom. We are excited for this session, Tom.
Wonderful. Thank you, Katie. And thanks everyone for joining live or watching this recording later on. Today, I'm going to be focused on an overview of top-down and bottom-up approaches to AI, giving a conceptual description to start. What do I mean by top-down, bottom-up approaches to AI? And then giving some examples in demos of Copilot for Microsoft 365 and Copilot for Service. These are going to be mainly bottom-up focused approaches in the demos, but we'll also have a little bit of discussion in there on how there are aspects to using these tools that are not constrained to being one or the other. So we'll get into that discussion on merging top-down and bottom-up approaches and how different people can use these tools in different ways to connect that kind of top-down and bottom-up approach. Then I'll have a couple of case studies, our use at Boyer, as well as another company, and to help exemplify or illustrate the concepts that we're talking about today. And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end as well. So feel free to drop questions into that Q&A feature, and I'll answer those more towards the end. And feedback is also encouraged. So if your question is feedback or additional perspective on how your organization has been using, experimenting with, benefiting from AI, that is super helpful for us to hear, because this is a very large change for a lot of us. And there is a lot of breadth and depth to the change that's happening right now. So while we have our perspective at Boyer and what we're learning and experiencing as a Microsoft partner, we really benefit from staying in communication with our clients, other partners, other folks that are using AI and learning and evolving as we're all going here. So jumping into, when I say top-down and bottom-up approaches to AI, essentially what I mean is top-down are leadership-driven initiatives, and bottom-up are employee-driven utilization. Now, as we'll talk about several times today, there are overlaps between these approaches. There are points of connection. So it's not really necessary to think about them as totally separate, but distinguishing them can be helpful both as we think about AI, but also as we plan and talk internally about who's doing what, what are roles and responsibilities, and how are we aligning our efforts around adoption of this game-changing tool and approach to work. So from a top-down perspective, a couple examples are alignment to strategy, policy and governance, resource allocation, and change management. When I say alignment to strategy, an example of that could be using AI to attract, engage, and really maximize the output from key members of a team. And so that could be part of a HR and leadership team strategy, recognizing kind of the role that AI could play there, and distinguishing that from bottom-up side being more about tool adoption. So as those key personnel, key talent are attracted or retained to your organization, then the actual adoption of those tools being something that's more bottom-up or employee-driven utilization of AI. Going back to the alignment to strategy bullet, from a nonprofit perspective, that can look like accelerating mission outcomes by enabling high impact staff with AI. So maybe your fundraising team can respond to grants more effectively, or can your programs team can resolve more cases or work with your stakeholders more effectively. And some of that alignment can be most effective from a leadership perspective. Then policy and governance are incredibly important as well, with these tools that have emergent capabilities or things that we have not experienced in previous technologies that are more like interface and deterministic. Some of these AI models have raised new questions for our organizations on which employees can use which tools, how can they use them, where can they use them, what data do we want input into Copilot versus ChatGPT versus another model. And those policy and governance conversations typically work best from a leadership kind of centralized perspective, with feedback from individual contributors and from different parts of the organization. But having leadership bought in on policy and governance can really help reduce that friction, as we'll talk more about later today. Resource allocation, budgets, assigning personnel, and prioritizing AI initiatives is also another key area where leadership-driven efforts are very important for resource allocation. And change management dovetails with that as well, where having budget for training, having time and space for employees to learn about AI, to share knowledge, and manage changes to processes, as well as roles and other kind of unintended impacts that can come up from adopting new tools. It can be very important to have that as a top-down leadership-driven initiative. Now, from more of the bottom-up side of AI adoption, we talked about tool adoption, and we'll see several kind of hands-on examples today that help to exemplify and illustrate what that can look like and where AI is already useful and impactful today. Knowledge sharing is another important area of employee-driven utilization. Like Katie mentioned, I have been enthusiastically exploring AI for years now and have been enjoying sharing what's been working well for me, as well as things that I've been disappointed by or surprised by, where AI works really well on some tasks and it's not a great fit on other tasks, just like any other tool. We use Excel for certain types of problems. We use D365 for relationship management, but we learn over time kind of which tool is right for which scenario. So that knowledge sharing and building out or adding to like wiki internal documentation can be really helpful for other employees, other individual contributors to buy in and adopt these tools more effectively and more efficiently. In a similar vein, skill development, whether that's through Microsoft Learn or some of the other Copilot related upskilling resources. And it's helpful that Microsoft has continued to make these resources available on a very self-service basis. So I can go out, you can go out to Microsoft Learn or just search for different Copilot learning resources. And a lot of that can be self-directed. If there's, a open slot of time in your day, or you have a rock, traction rock, or a learning focus for your upcoming month or quarter, that sort of skill development can really benefit from being an employee-directed, kind of self-directed, bottom-up effort. And then lastly, contributing feedback is a very important part of AI adoption. And as I'll highlight more towards the end today, it really aligns with the top-down, bottom-up kind of communication cycle or feedback loop, so that AI, strategy, policy, and governance, top-down, is not just happening in a vacuum or disconnected from the actual like work experiences of the employees that are utilizing these tools. So we'll talk more about where top-down and bottom-up merge later on in the webinar today. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into seeing some of these copilots in action. So today we're going to focus on Copilot for Microsoft 365 and Copilot for Service. And it's important to be aware that Microsoft has Copilots for each role. And pretty incredible in the last 2 years, how we've gone from AI being just a kind of vague interest of some technologists to it being something that is accessible and utilized by millions, probably approaching billions of people around the world. And from a Microsoft ecosystem perspective, which is where Boyer works, and many of you as clients and partners of Boyer are connected as well, it can be helpful to be aware of how Microsoft is approaching these different copilots. So in the top left of my diagram here, we have copilots for web. If you're using the Edge browser or Bing for search, you've likely seen Copilot showing up in there. And I've been pleasantly surprised that I've been switching my just quick web use of AI towards Edge and Bing over the last 6 months here, away from using kind of ChatGPT primarily before that. So it's been helpful both from an internal alignment perspective, as I'll touch on in our case study in a little while here, of how Boyer as a company has policies around what is acceptable to input data into web-based Copilot versus Copilots within M365 or other areas. Moving into the center of the diagram, we have Copilot for M365, and we're going to see today several examples from this area where Copilots are really as broad as that whole Office or productivity suite, where anyone that's using Word, Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, SharePoint now has access to Copilots in these different locations as well. And so there really is Copilot for each role, just from an M365 perspective. And then it gets even more role specific with Copilots for business within D365, and we'll see Copilot for service specifically today. We don't have a chance to touch on Copilots for analytics within Fabric today, but that is another interesting area, Copilot for Power BI specifically, and the chat with your data interactions becoming increasingly useful for us to interact with large data models and data sets in a more conversational way. And then the areas of greatest traction so far with Copilots have been in development, specifically pro development, so GitHub Copilot, but also low and no code development. And this has been exciting to see updates in recent months where Copilot can help now with things like data modeling and then building the user interface based on that data model. So really starting to see some shifts in how each of us is working with AI and Copilots in the Microsoft ecosystem specifically. With that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our demo environment here. So for our Copilot for Microsoft 365 demo, we're going to focus on this theme of improving quality, and we'll see Copilot in Teams, Outlook, Whiteboard, and Excel. So let's go ahead and start in our Teams environment. And we're going to have a few simulated demos today, just due to the complexity of demoing, Teams within a Teams call like we're on. So thank you for bearing with me as we go through these kind of simulated demos. And I can affirm that everything I'm showing today, I've experienced, firsthand and worked with other people that have had positive, productive experiences with these features within Copilot. So just showing simulated demos for the sake of clarity and kind of quick communication with you all. But these are all hands-on things that we can work with live today with Copilot for Microsoft 365. So for this first Teams demo, you can see I have my calendar here, and I'm going to join this call, and we're syncing up with one of our suppliers on a parts recall. So I'm joining this call a little bit late. Meetings have a way of dominoing sometimes, so I'm just jumping into this one now, and I'm going to open up Copilot in the right sidebar and ask it to recap the meeting so far. If you've been on a previous webinar with me, you may have heard me talk about this being one of my favorite features when I am joining a meeting late and need to get a quick update on what's been discussed, so that then I can get into follow-up questions and start engaging the meeting more fluidly and not needing to ask everyone to stop, catch me up to speed, and then jump into the conversation from there. So in the right sidebar here, right within a Teams call, Copilot has given me a summary of what's been discussed so far, as well as some questions related to what's being discussed to help me jump right into this call. Now, we continue the call. We have a good rest of the conversation, but I need to jump into another event after this. So I go ahead and I wrap up this meeting. And now it's later in my day, and I'm coming back into Teams to refresh my memory on what we talked about in that call. So in my chats, I have this call, the supplier sync that I was on earlier, and I go to the recap tab along the top. And here I have the recording of the entire call, as well as meeting notes that I can open up the dropdown and see more detailed notes. And this has been transcribed by Copilot, so taking just the audio of the call, transcribing it into text, and then summarizing that full-length transcription into more digestible notes here. This is, both in my experience and in Microsoft's communication, one of the most impactful and adopted uses for Copilot to date, and really broadly accessible, that we can get started. Even if you've never used Copilot before, you can get started with this type of meeting summarization with essentially no effort on your part. So really helpful to have this boost in the quality of our meeting notes and how that can lead to better communication, more consistency in our communication, as many of us are bouncing between a lot of contexts and a lot of different information that we're trying to remember on a daily basis. Speaking of trying to stay up to speed on this information, we can also look at mentions. So seeing where my demo persona was mentioned in this call here. And we can go into the full transcript. So scrolling through to see the line by line dialogue from this meeting. And I find it helpful to go back and forth between the transcript, the AI notes themselves, and chatting with Copilot directly so that I have different ways of engaging with the knowledge that has been shared in this meeting. So I can then chat with Copilot even after the meeting is done, so both during and after, and get some clarification on what decisions were made. Maybe I had to leave early, or just refreshing my memory on those decisions, as well as the action items coming out of those decisions. So this type of supplementary or augmentation that Copilot can do is really helpful for improving the quality of our Teams meetings. And as we're on a Teams call all together right now, we've got recording going and can share out some of the recording or the summarized notes as part of our follow-up as well. So switching gears from seeing how Teams can help, Copilot within Teams can help us improve quality. Now let's go ahead and go into our Outlook environment and see Copilot in action there. So I'm looking at my Outlook inbox, and I've got a number of emails here that I'm working through. I'm going to start off by replying to this first email, and you can see Draft with Copilot is showing up as I reply. And this email is about my tax return, an issue that requires my attention. And Copilot has read the context of this email. It has helped me apologize for the issue. And I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm bouncing between a lot of different emails, it can be hard to keep, a nice, polite, polished tone. As a Minnesotan, there's a lot of focus on being nice around here. So it can be helpful to have Copilot, giving me the first draft of this email and having it suggest some meeting times so that we can resolve this issue as was requested in this email. So AI generated content, always important to review, make sure that it looks good. So I give this a read through, and then I can choose to keep and make any changes that I want here before sending that email. In addition to drafting email, Copilot can also help us by summarizing. So there's several emails in this chain here, and Copilot is reading through them and now giving me a bulleted summary, including these citations that I can click on to see where is it specifically pulling this Christy Klein information from. So I click on that citation, and it brings me to that link from Christy. Again, very helpful for moving through our email and the long chains of emails that we're all on in a way that can be a little more intuitive and Copilot helping us jump to the right point in the chain. Now, Copilot can also help us draft in a more free-form fashion. So if we're not responding to an existing email, but let's say we are requesting Copilot to draft an email on a recall that we're working on for a specific product. So we give it some overview information on what we want the email to say. we can adjust the tone and the length of the email before we click generate. And Copilot is going to draft up an email based on our request and that tone and length input. And then we can review and make adjustments as needed to this draft email. So for now, I'm going to save this draft. This looks pretty good, but drafting this email is reminding me that I had another email saved in my drafts that I wanted to get a little bit of coaching from Copilot. Again, moving between a lot of contexts, it's not always easy to know exactly how to phrase something. So helpful to get just a little bit of on-demand coaching. And I can go to the command bar as I'm looking at this email draft and request that Copilot give me a little bit of coaching on this email where I'm expressing some frustration. Copilot is suggesting that I could be more polite. It seems like fair feedback. And also giving me a recommendation on different phrasing that I could use rather than saying, I'm super frustrated, maybe saying this situation is challenging. And this, again, is a feature that I've worked with a little bit firsthand to see kind of open up a draft email and then get some quick input from Copilot from a coaching perspective. And using Copilot within Teams and Outlook has been helpful for improving the quality of some of my communication interactions. Now, both of these examples so far, Teams and Outlook, have been uses of Copilot that almost anyone within an organization could use, right? Most of us are using Teams and Outlook quite a bit. Now let's switch gears into Whiteboard. And if you haven't used Whiteboard before, it is, as the name suggests, a whiteboarding application, similar to Miro or other whiteboard solutions. And it can be helpful both for quick post-it notes, quick visual collaborations. And now with Copilot, we can do some nice new approaches or augmented approaches to ideation. So if I click on Copilot in the bottom of Whiteboard here, I can ask it to suggest some ideas based on a prompt. And we're continuing this theme of a bicycle part that needs a recall. And I'm asking Copilot to help me think through what are some actions that I need to do related to this recall. So notifying customers, updating product documentation. Yep, that all looks like important steps that need to happen. Let's ask it for a couple more ideas. These, assess financial impact, coordinate with regulatory agencies. Looking like good suggestions so far. So I choose to insert these post-it notes. And then I think what's more impressive than just coming up with the ideas, which can be helpful, especially when we're working in a crisis situation and we want to make sure that we're covering all of our bases, is Copilot's ability to help us categorize. So you saw there at the top, I can just click categorize, and now Copilot is helping me group together these different ideas into customer support, product remediation, communication, and regulatory compliance. Again, moving quickly, and maybe this is more of an example of a top-down use of Copilot or something that a manager or leader might do in order to get an overview of what needs to be done from a product recall perspective before delegating and managing some of this effort with a broader team and other partners. Now, let's drill in a little bit more to one of these specific ideas. So arranging for repairs or replacements. And again, when we select this post-it, we can ask Copilot to suggest some additional ideas related to this one. We can, again, insert those ideas and categorize. So this is showing how we can iterate and work with Copilot, not in just a one-off prompt kind of way, but suggest ideas, categorize those ideas, and then drill in, suggest additional ideas, again, categorizing as we go. And then likely doing some more of our own collaboration with our human team members as we are going through this whiteboarding session. Now, collaborating with other members of our team, it can be helpful to summarize this entire whiteboard. And so I clicked on Copilot in the lower corner there, asked it to summarize the board, and it has now given me this bulleted summary, including screenshots of what we've got on this board as a loop component. So essentially just a page, a link that I can share with other members of my team. And I can kind of zoom out and see how Copilot has helped me work through brainstorming this product recall issue. So far we've seen Copilot within Teams and Outlook, now Whiteboard, helping us improve quality of communication and augmenting workflows that we would be making anyway, attending meetings, answering emails, brainstorming, and generating to-do lists and categorizing those tasks that need to be done, and then communicating an overview of that plan out to our team as well. Now let's switch into many people's favorite solution, Excel, and take a look at how Copilot can help us analyze this data and quickly spot patterns or trends more quickly than we might be doing manually. So I'm going to open up Copilot in the right sidebar here. And typically, Copilot works best if the data is formatted into a table, but that is no longer a hard requirement. So you can actually use Copilot in Excel with non-tabular data as well. And I'm going to ask Copilot to highlight the top 10 values in this year-to-date quantity sold column O here. And so its pre-formatted suggestion was to bold those top 10 values. So we can see 29, 28, 28. And that's helpful. I can see a little bit more of the top 10 values, but it's still not super easy to, at a glance, see that data. So I'm going to try again and say, highlight the top 10%. And this time I want to see that highlighted in yellow. And in both of these cases, you're seeing Copilot apply conditional formatting, where these are things that many of us have done over the years using the traditional conditional formatting menu here in Excel. And something that I find really helpful is that Copilot is also creating these conditional formatting rules within this same interface. So maybe it got me part of the way there, but I want to change the color of how it's highlighted, or I want to change from top 10% to top 20%. So being able to work with Copilot and then iterate off of what Copilot has completed for us can be really helpful. And this is another example where maybe you know how to do conditional formatting, you've used it over the years, but it's been a year or it's been 6 months since you've had to do it. And so it's not really top of mind, but you might be able to more easily verbalize, this is what I want to happen. And having Copilot here to close that gap between what you want to do and how you're actually going to do it within Excel can be very helpful. And my personal experience with this recently has been improving an estimate template that we have within Excel. And Copilot helped me to condense down the big 80-row long estimate template into about 10 rows. That was then easier to copy out into a PowerPoint to make it more digestible. So an example there of how This is something I could have done just manually looking into documentation or other forums to figure out how to condense, copy, preserve the links between different cells within Excel. But my work was accelerated by being able to ask Copilot for some input, and it gave 2 or 3 very helpful answers as I was working through that process. So if we close out of our conditional formatting section here, let's take another look at what else Copilot in Excel can do. So it's not just conditional formatting, but we can also add formula columns and do some additional calculations. So we're going to ask Copilot to add a formula column for the total profit by ID. And Copilot is starting by generating the suggested calculation. It gives us a little overview explanation here, and then we can click the drop down to actually see what else is happening with this calculation. Now we start by subtracting, then we multiply, and then we format the result. That looks like a good start to me. So I'm going to go ahead and insert the column. And now we have this new total profit column added to our spreadsheet. And lastly, I want to ask a question based on that added column. So total profit based on derailleur type. And now we have a chart based on that column that we can add into the sheet. Again, pivot tables are something that many of us have worked with over the years, but if you are not actively working with them, it can be challenging to remember, the exact steps. So having Copilot be able to conversationally add a pivot table into this Excel spreadsheet has personally saved me time on about a half dozen occasions just in the past couple of months here. So zooming back out, we have been looking at demos of Copilot for Microsoft 365 in Teams, Outlook, Whiteboard, and Excel. This is not a comprehensive demo of everything that Copilot for Microsoft 365 can do. So there's definitely more to explore here. But in today's theme of merging top-down and bottom-up approaches to AI, these are some quick examples of how almost any member of a team can get more done, be more effective, improve the quality of their output by working with Copilot for Microsoft 365. Now let's look at a more role-specific use of Copilot and how we can resolve cases faster with Copilot for Service. So in this live demo, we're going to see summarizing and catching up on changes to cases, drafting email responses, and chatting with our knowledge base. Jumping into my demo environment here. So I'm accessing Dynamics 365 customer service using the Edge browser. And I am starting from a list of my active cases. And I'm going to go into my corporate network data breach case. Bouncing between environments. There we go. And within this case, you can see a couple different areas where Copilot is showing up in Dynamics 365 customer service. We have Copilot in the summary tab here. And what Copilot is doing here is looking through the timeline as well as the fields on this case and giving us a quick paragraph summary about this support ticket. It involves a corporate network data breach, a number of impacted users, and file details still unknown. And if I'm moving between cases, this can be a nice way to get an overview of the situation that I'm working on without needing to go into kind of each one of these fields to start. Oftentimes, this can be a starting point, and then we jump into maybe activities in the timeline or the next actions that we want to take based on that quick summary. In another example of Copilot getting progressively smarter, we can also translate this on the fly. So maybe our customer service team is globally distributed, and I want to be able to quickly translate and get input from other members of our team on the summary of this case. Then I could translate that here, and let's go into French, and then copy the translation and open up a Teams chat and share that directly with the relevant team member there. So an example of how Copilot is improving that communication, even amongst kind of diverse and distributed team members. Beyond just summarizing, we can also use Copilot for highlighting what's been going on in the timeline, the different activities related to this case. And the difference here is that where the summary is looking at kind of the overall case, the timeline is typically a little more date specific. So I can look back and see this was reported, back in November. A request for additional information had been sent back in June. And then I can take these as starting points and go down into the rest of the case from there. So continuing this theme where some of the value that Copilot is providing is giving us jumping off points. So we're a little more informed and not just digging through all of the information that is available to us, but seeking the information that Copilot has helped draw our attention to. Beyond summarizing and highlighting information within the case, and similar functionality shows up in other parts of Dynamics 365, just for reference, we can also respond to the email or draft an email using Copilot in D365. So if I create a new email from the timeline of this case record, we're going to see Copilot within the draft box on the screen here. And we've got a couple of suggestions right off the bat, or we can describe what we need. Since this has been an ongoing case that's open, I'm going to start just by empathizing with the feedback. Again, continuing this theme of Copilot helping me be Minnesota nice in difficult situations. So Copilot is drafting out an apology here, confirming that we're going to pass along the complaint or the case information. Also using information from the description of the case here. So Copilot is generating an informed response based on the context that we're in, and not just a default "we're sorry" kind of templated response, but a little bit more personalized based on the context of this case. Now, just like we've seen in other Copilot uses, we can adjust length and tone, we can translate, or ask for specific revisions in a more iterative fashion with Copilot here. And for now, we can also keep it and then just go in and make those changes ourselves now that this is just text within our draft email. Beyond just empathizing with feedback, Copilot can also use knowledge to respond directly to the email. But first, let's look at how we can use Copilot within chat to get some of that knowledge ourselves. So let's say a team member has called me and they're looking for help on this steam valve defect case. And I know that we have something in our knowledge base related to kind of defective product process. I'm going to ask Copilot, what is our defective product process? And Copilot is going out to our knowledge articles that are published within Dynamics 365 Customer Service, and it's pulling back a summary of that information, again, including a citation, So I can go and actually open up this full knowledge article and verify, yep, this looks like an accurate overview from Copilot. And so I could help my team member that's asking me, and maybe I can point them in this direction for future questions. Say, here's our knowledge base. You can chat with Copilot to get some of these answers there as well. And maybe then the next time that coworker is responding to this type of case, they know that they can go in, draft an email with Copilot, and just tell Copilot to resolve the problem using those knowledge articles. So now instead of having that knowledge in chat, we have that same damaged or defective product knowledge article being referenced right in line with this email, and using the context of the steam valve that is referenced in the case here. So drawing these back together, where Copilot is grounded in the knowledge of our knowledge articles within customer service, as well as the context of this case. And by bringing those together, it is making me more impactful in this situation in resolving cases more quickly, because I have been able to summarize and catch up on changes to cases with Copilot, draft those email responses, and chat with the knowledge base. So switching gears from our demo back into this discussion of merging top-down and bottom-up approaches to AI. You'll see a number of our recommendations here are connecting those top-down and bottom-up approaches that we started talking about today. So skill development and resource sharing. There can be aspects of the tool adoption and self-service upskilling on the skill development, more of a bottom-up approach. And typically that works best when resources are being allocated, whether that's budget or training time, to enable that skill development. So merging top-down and bottom-up. And from a resource sharing perspective, that could look like a AI-focused channel within Teams, or knowledge articles, or a wiki that help with some of that resource sharing, where people are maybe sharing role-specific recommendations of how they've been using AI. We also recommend strategic alignment and tool adoption. There are a number of emerging and maturing frameworks for these strategic alignment efforts, and would be happy to talk in more detail about your specific organization. But at a high level, one example is taking technical patterns such as chat with your data, content generation, or personalized recommendations. These are recurring technical patterns that show up in a lot of different places, and matching up those technical patterns with more business-focused use cases like workforce enablement or AI-enabled product experiences. And so by working through essentially technical feasibility and business desirability, we can find some of that strategic alignment so that your internal teams or external stakeholders are adopting and engaging with tools with AI in ways that are beneficial and aligned to the organization's strategy. We also recommend having policy and governance with feedback loops, so that the content that is approved by the organization to be used with AI is being updated on an ongoing basis. And it's not just sort of set it and forget it, but that there are mechanisms, whether those are quarterly meetings or feedback forms, for gathering some of that feedback from individual contributors from the kind of bottom-up perspective, and keeping policy and governance in active communication with those feedback loops. And in a similar vein, change management and continuous improvement. This is not going to be a kind of one-time shift with AI from what we can see so far and from what we've experienced at Boyer. It really is an ongoing effort, both in terms of benefits that we're experiencing and the adaptations that we're making to be aware of what's possible and what we want to prioritize in terms of areas that we're improving as individuals and as an organization. So keeping that leadership-driven change management in alignment, in communication with the continuous improvement efforts that are being championed and executed from an employee perspective is critically important. The benefits of these recommendations are improved quality, as we saw in a number of the Copilot from Microsoft 365 demos today. We saw a few different areas where communication can really be improved from adopting some of these recommendations. Increasing employee engagement, as I alluded to at the start today as well. AI is a topic of excitement and concern and a whole range of emotions and perspectives from a lot of different employees around AI right now. And so by having training and relevant materials available, it can help keep people engaged, keep confidence that your organization is aware of and engaging with this big change in technology, and helping your employees stay, kind of relevant and up to date with these big changes as well. One kind of nice to share resource is there is a series called The Prompt with Trevor Noah that Microsoft has released a number of short videos, and that can be one way to keep employees engaged. Just kind of a nice resource to share as people are learning more about AI. And Trevor Noah is a very personable individual for helping have some of those conversations. Then back to, from a benefits perspective, resolving issues faster and more accurately, as we saw in the customer service demos, and reducing internal friction by keeping some of this alignment between top-down and bottom-up perspectives. I know we're coming up on time for today, so just briefly touching on our case studies and then having a few minutes for questions here. You've heard a lot of my perspective on Boyer as we've been going today, but just real briefly, we've been finding traction both from a top-down and bottom-up, and merging these efforts together. And we've got a couple examples here of how our team has been approaching AI in these two related ways. There's also a case study from Schneider Electric on Microsoft site, and this is more of a large, enterprise level adoption of creating a chief AI officer role, strategic collaborations with Microsoft and other major technology companies, and then the intelligent apps that Schneider has been developing internally, and the efforts they've been going through for tool adoption and to get feedback from their team. So some nice examples in the case study there. I would be happy to share the link out in follow-up as well if you're interested to see how Schneider Electric has been adopting AI. Here are a few, as we're wrapping up for today, a few actionable ways to start with AI. So we saw number one, recapping a meeting in our demo today. And then also number 7, getting help writing within Word is a very low barrier to entry way to get started with AI. And you can see more prompts and get started at aka.ms/copilotlab. Thank you all for your attention. If you're ready to get started, we welcome you to schedule a call with Boyer, send us an email, or if you want to jump straight in, you can try Copilot at copilot.microsoft.com. There is a 15% off Copilot for M365 for new subscriptions through Boyer. And please reach out to us if you would like to learn more about that. And for upskilling learning resources for your organization, you can check out adoption.microsoft.com/Copilot.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. That's a lot of great information. And I love that slide with the 10 different options. I think I've taken a screenshot of it a couple different times. I'm not sure why, multiple, but apparently I keep losing it. Anyway, we do have one question for you specifically on the licensing. I know this can get really complicated. We actually have a licensing expert who just got certified recently, but can you tell us, is Copilot for Teams free to use? How do you get it added? You talk a little bit about how that licensing works, just high level.
Yeah, good question. Typically, Copilot for Teams is going to be through Copilot for Microsoft 365. So as part of that productivity suite. But there are multiple ways to license Copilot within Teams. So recommend starting by talking to your system administrator about Copilot for Microsoft 365. And feel free to reach out to us if that doesn't get you where you're looking to go.
Awesome. Do you have any other questions? If not, we can get you off a couple minutes early. Awesome. I think we're good then. Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate it. Everyone, I hope you have a great, wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, Katie. Thank you, everyone.